When nations go to war, facts meet ethics. We begin not with answers, but with the questions that follow every conflict. Which wars were necessary, which were mistakes, and who gets to decide? These questions shape policy, history, and individual lives. Over the next 5 minutes, we move through archives, expert voices in the faces of those touched by conflict to weigh public and private costs. No single film can settle these debates, but we can map them. How reasons given, rules applied, and consequences measured leave moral traces. Listen to historians and veterans. Hear the civilians who endured campaigns and the legal scholars who wrestle with law and conscience. We begin with history because context matters. What presidents declared, what public supported, and what realities unfolded on the ground. From independence to recent conflicts, American wars have been framed by ideals and interests. Those framings shape how we evaluate moral claims. Leaders invoke defense, liberation, or national security. Each claim invites scrutiny. Is the threat real, proportionate, and immediate enough to warrant force? Public consent changes over time. Initial support can curdle as casualties, costs, and ethical doubts accumulate in public memory. Archival footage shows both resolve and uncertainty, briefing room maps, torn city streets, and faces that register the human toll of strategic choices. Histories are contested. Veterans speak of duty, critics point to undented consequences. Both perspectives help us test moral arguments about means and ends. Understanding past decisions clarifies patterns, escalation, justification, and the recurring difficulty of foreseeing long-term outcomes from short-term choices. Just war theory asks whether a war is right to begin and right in how it is fought. Those criteria guide moral evaluation. Self-defense is often invoked, but proportionality and discrimination between combatants and civilians remain the core ethical constraints in practice. Legal frameworks matter, yet law lags behind technology and tactics. Unmanned systems, intelligence operations, and covert actions complicate moral accountability. Experts we spoke with emphasize obligation to foresee harm and to mitigate civilian suffering wherever possible, even under pressure. Moral responsibility extends beyond commanders to planners, politicians, and publics that sustain campaigns. Responsibility is diffuse but real. When violations occur, accountability matters. Truth, investigation, and reparations are part of ethical recovery and rebuilding trust. Beyond strategy, wars leave human tracings, displaced families, injured bodies, and lifelong psychological wounds that statistics cannot fully capture. A veteran we interviewed says, "Memory is heavy, training met with loss, and the question of whether sacrifice achieved its aims lingered for years." Civilians recount nights of fear, homes lost, schools destroyed, futures interrupted. Those stories shift abstract debates into moral urgency. Refugee flows reshape regions and lives. Hosts and displaced persons alike face moral questions about duty, hospitality, and burden sharing. Families of the fallen seek meaning and justice. Their testimony often becomes the moral ledger by which wars are judged. To count casualties is necessary, but to listen to survivors restores human context that guides ethical assessment and future policy. How should democracies hold themselves to account? Transparency, oversight, and robust public debate are essential in assessing wartime decisions. Legal reform and clearer rules for new technologies can reduce harm, but they require political will and public vigilance to be effective. Moral humility matters. Admitting error, investigating harm, And offering reparations are steps that acknowledge victims and rebuild legitimacy. Education, too, is a duty. Teaching history in full complexity helps future citizens weigh the moral costs before endorsing force. Ultimately, the question is collective. What kind of democracy decides to fight, and what standards will it live by afterward? We close with a simple imperative: to ask hard questions, listen to affected voices, and insist on policies that minimize harm and honor responsibility.